So, you're a business owner dedicated to the significant and sustainable growth of both you and your business. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Add a Zero podcast. I'm Jay Allen, your host, and delighted to have you with us today whilst we talk about leadership and the 5 levels of leadership. Congratulations, you've taken on a member of staff. You've moved from the role of solopreneur to entrepreneur. You've gone from being the business operator to becoming the business owner. I'm delighted for you, and all of that now frees you up to be able to do. So now what? All of a sudden, I've got another mouth to feed, another salary to find. I've got all of these other additional responsibilities to take on. It was so much easier when I just did it myself. And that's the risk that we all fall into each and every time that we grow our team from 1 to 101. It rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It's so much easier to be able to do it ourselves. Or when we take somebody on, to be able to mollycoddle and bottle them and protect them from what is. Or to throw them at the deep end without any help and support and then expecting them to know exactly what to do at a moment's notice. The simple fact is that the moment you take on a new person into the business, your role changes forever. And we need to be able to grow and evolve and develop with them in order for us not to become the bottleneck in our own business. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at what it means to be able to move from working in it to working on it, to being able to hire the right people, and then the role that you need to take on in order for them to become the best that they can be. The chances are that at some stage in your past, you've had some form of hierarchical environment in which you've operated, be that school and a teacher and then a head of year and then deputy head and a head, or college, or possibly work, or maybe even a sports club that you've been a member of either now or in the past, where there's some form of leadership within. And being in business is pretty much the same as all of the others, but we need to understand as to the roles in which each take and where we should be aspiring to. And for that, I want to take you back to my first days as a soldier in the British Army and the lessons that I learnt from within. When I first joined the regiment, you start off as a class 4. And then over a period of time, months and years of training and evolution and development, of supervision and tests, that you go from a class 4 to a class 3 to a class 2, and eventually you qualify as a class 1. And once you're a class 1, you then have the capacity and capability to supervise class 4s, and the whole thing rinse and repeat. But once you've made it to a class 1, you're then eligible for promotions to a Lance Corporal, the permission and the abilities to be able to manage other people. And I'll never forget standing in front of the Regimental Sergeant Major, W01 Mick Germain, as he pinned the Lance Corporal chevron to my arm, congratulating me on making it to being a Lance Corporal. And the words he used still resound within me to this day. Congratulations, Lance Corporal Allen. You've now earned the right to serve others. And I was confused. I was perplexed. I couldn't understand this. I've won a stripe. I'm now able to command private soldiers beneath me. If that had been my attitude, I might as well have stuck it on with Velcro, because that's not how management works. And I quickly learnt that lesson over the coming days and weeks, stepping into this new role and responsibility of a Lance Corporal. What I quickly learnt and realised and thankfully embedded quickly within my management capabilities is my job is to now look after the people in my care. My job is now to ensure that they have the right kit and equipment and resources and time and allocation and funds to be able to do the things that they need to be able to do, on top of me doing the things that I'm still expected to do for the corporal and the sergeant and the staff sergeant above me. My job just becomes more complex, but transitional. I need to be able to move from just doing the doing to ensuring the doing gets done. And that's the shift that we need to move to. We need to understand that as a business owner, our job is not to dive back in and do the doing, even though at times we might feel compelled to do so. It might be easier, quicker, cheaper for you to be able to do it yourself. But in doing so, you become the bottleneck of the business's growth and evolution, because as a role, that is not your job any longer. You gave that up when you became an employer as opposed to an employee. And there are times, still to this day, that on occasion, when I walk into my office, before I sit, I stand and look at the seat to which I'm about to sit in, and simply acknowledge the role and responsibility that that seat demands of me currently and of whoever evolves into that chair after I'm gone. I now understand that whenever I sit in the seat of the managing director, I have to perform the duties of a managing director. And that's not to say that I don't get on well with Scott or with Ryan or with Amanda or with Elaine. But sometimes there is the need that I have to put on my managing director suit to step back into being the sergeant major, as opposed to being Jay and Scott and mates down the pub. And that's where the problem sometimes evolves as businesses grow and develop, is the fact that we've employed people that are friendly and think that we have to be friends. So I want to share with you today Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, a very, very well-established model that's used around the world to understand that as we grow and develop and move away from being the doer to being the supervisor of the doing, that we move into and through these different levels of leadership as we become more competent and more capable of being that of a leader. Now, the first step of a leader, the first rung on the ladder, tends to be based around position. We almost wear the rank with pride. We are keen to share with people the title, and people will do as I tell them because I tell them. It becomes quite authoritarian, and very quickly it erodes any form of long-standing relationship. If we stay at this level of leadership, we need to understand that the title is that of something to remind you of your responsibility, and not that to be able to be of dogmatic authoritarianisms to the people within our care. As we move through that, the next level is understanding through relationships. We start to be able to build relationships with team players or key players. We start to be able to build collaboratives. We start to encourage and develop people to enable them to come together. We start to see people and the skills and the character flaws that they have, and understand more about how to get the best from people. We cajole, we encourage, we inspire, we pull together. We start to knit together the woven focus of what it looks like in order to be able to have all of these multitudes of characters that come together to deliver something special. The third level of leadership is often where we see the majority of people move through and to and then get stuck with. The third level is all around performance. And once we've got that level of collaboration, of people working together, it then starts to focus on spreadsheets and results and efficiencies. being able to measure one against the other or one team against the other, to be able to make slight tweaks and changes and amendments in order to be able to get the most bang for the buck. And we'll have all have met and understood and acknowledged somebody in each one of those of the 3 first levels. And yet the majority of times when I work with business owners who've already got a team in place, I can quickly assess their management and leadership style and notice as to whether they're a level 1 leader, a level 2 leader, or have evolved to get to a level 3 leader. But there are 5 levels of leadership, and I've rarely seen many evolve beyond the 3rd. The 4th level of leadership is around development of team and self, and acknowledging what we have already and identifying what's next. Identifying within ourselves and that of our leadership team the skills that are still lacking and needs to be addressed in order for us all to step up to that next elusive level. The 4th level of leadership is around personal and professional development of both self and team, and understand that everything that we've done has got us to where we are, and yet everything that we want to achieve is potentially currently out of focus, out of reach, because of our own incapability of ever having been there before. I was working with a client last year who, an accidental, incredibly successful business owner. He said he started off as an apprentice working for somebody else in a small bedroom, back bedroom business rather, in his local town. And 4 or 5 of them grew together and subsequently started to win new opportunities and grow and develop and take more and more people on. That 27, 28 years later, that business does near on £70 million a year revenue, all based on 5 people that came together and had an idea, saw a niche, and got to a point where they're now a multi-7, almost 8-figure business. Accidental business owners. And yet, the risks within their business, the vulnerabilities identified through the Adazero survey are absolutely horrifying. To know that there is a business out there doing 70 million plus turnover with over 110 salaried PAYE staff reliant on that as their form of income. And yet every year, because it's a seasonal business and they haven't been able to identify or bridge the gaps between good and bad, or summer and winter in this case, every year they end up going to the bank and asking to borrow more money in order to see them through the winter period that they'll repay back the following spring. It's a seasonal business that is still reliant on bootstrapping every single year because the people in the business have never ran a business of such size and might and consideration and complexity that they're still running it as if it was a backroom bedroom business and yet turning over multiple millions of pounds. The benefits that that business would have by having an operations manager or director brought into the business that has already worked in a 8-figure, multi-8, 9-figure business would be instrumental in enabling them to be able to overcome some of the challenges that they face. But in order to be able to do so, the 4 or 5 people that set it up and have grown and evolved and allowed this to be able to snowball into what it is, needs to acknowledge their own weaknesses, needs to acknowledge that the errors and the mistakes that they continue to make or overlook or at risk of falling into the pitfalls of are a lack of personal development, a lack of understanding that what's got you to where you are will not get you to where you want to be without hurdles, risks and flaws. And it's only when we are able to understand that, to accept that, to recognize our own weaknesses and that of each other, to call each other out and say, what is it that you don't know that if you did know, we wouldn't make that mistake again? Where do we get that knowledge and that experience from? Who do we need to bring into the business to be able to offer a new perspective on enabling us to overcome the hurdles and challenges that we face every year? The fifth level of leadership is almost elusive. I rarely see it in business, and when I do, it's a flashing thought or an inspiration along the way. It tends to come from an individual as opposed to an organizational expectation. I don't think that it can easily be taught. I think something that it has to be evolved and grown into. That of servant leadership, of understanding the privilege of being at the very top of the industry is to serve all of those within the industry, to truly understand the people within the business and the contribution that they make. And my job in my business is to be a resource facilitator for the people within the business. My job is to be able to ensure that they have the right kit, the right equipment, the right training, the right education, the right environment, the right capabilities, the right abilities to be the best version of them that they can possibly be. To keep pushing their limits, to keep challenging them on their beliefs of capability themselves, of being able to inspire them to think and want more for themselves, but not for the business. And to allow the business to become a conduit that enables that to happen for them. To inspire them to think differently about themselves and to understand that tomorrow hasn't yet happened and therefore anything is still possible. We have to be willing to be able to step into the unknown if we want to achieve that difference to what we have already. And to do so, it means self-examination on a regular basis to say, what is it that I'm not doing? That if I did, all of tomorrow's could be different. The 5 levels of leadership are critical in anyone that's thinking about employing and growing a team of superheroes. And I'm really, really grateful for my military training as much as my professional commercial experience. It being able to understand firsthand how the British Army, probably one of the most professional fighting forces in the world, yes, I'm rather biased as a veteran of, but arguably one of the most professional fighting forces in the world. Why? Certainly it's not because of the amount of kit and equipment that they have or the number of personnel. It's about understanding that collectively, being able to employ the right people with the right levels of responsibility and parameters of control are able to achieve what others have only dreamt of. And that's what I wish for you also. If there's something within today that has really, really resonated with you or wants you to be able to reach out and say, how do I get to that stage or what does that look like? Then I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you look in the show notes, you'll see our email address and our web address, and I'd love to have a conversation. So get in touch and let's find out as to how to be able to help you and your team collectively at a zero. God bless, take care. I'll see you again next week.
That's all for this episode. As always, we really thank you for listening and welcome your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. So please do drop us a line by emailing podcast@mytruenorth.biz. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening to this through. And tell your colleagues and business network all about who we are. You've been listening to the At a Zero podcast presented by Jay Allen. Brought to you in association with My True North, the UK's leading ethical coaching company.